I want you to stop everything you are doing right now. I want you to push away your distractions, put down your phone, clear your mind completely, and come with me on a journey. Close your eyes if you have to. Block out the noise of the world, and I want you to imagine something wild. I want you to imagine that the entire universe, the billions of stars burning in the velvet night sky, the swirling galaxies spinning in the deep, the crashing oceans, the very atoms that are knitting together to make the chair you are sitting on right now, the air you are breathing, the blood pumping through your veins. I want you to imagine that all of this confusing, beautiful, chaotic mess of nature is actually a game, a massive cosmic game being played by the gods. Let's say, just for the sake of the picture, in our heads, that it is a giant game of chess. The board is the fabric of space and time itself, stretching out infinitely in all directions. And the pieces are the matter and energy, the electrons and quarks, the planets and comets that make up everything in existence. They are moving, interacting, colliding, and dancing across this infinite board. But here's the catch, and it is a frustrating, terrible catch. You don't get to play. You are not one of the gods moving the pieces with thunder and lightning. You don't get to touch the board. And even worse, nobody told you the rules. There is no rule book. There is no instruction manual handed down from the sky. There is no teacher to correct you. You are just a tiny, insignificant observer sitting in a dark corner of the room, and you are allowed to watch the board. But wait, it gets harder. You can't even see the whole board. It's too vast, and it's too dark. You can only see a little tiny corner of it, a few squares here and there. Maybe you can't even watch all the time. Maybe you can only look once in a while. Just a glimpse here and a glimpse there through a crack in the wall. And your job, the job of your entire life, the burning mission of every scientist who has ever lived, from Galileo peering through his telescope to Einstein dreaming in his patent office, is to watch the pieces move and try to figure out what the rules are. That is what physics is. That is all we are doing. We are watching a game we didn't create, trying to guess the rule book from the sidelines, one move at a time, trying to reverse engineer the mind of the universe. So you sit there, you pull up your chair, you wipe your glasses, and you watch. You stare at that board for days, for years, for centuries. You watch the pieces slide back and forth, and for a long time, it just looks like chaos. It looks like nonsense. Stuff is just happening without any rhyme or reason. But eventually, because you are patient, because you are obsessive, you notice something. You spot a pattern. You look at this one piece, the bishop, and you see that every time it moves, if it starts on a white square, it lands on a white square. It moves, and it lands on white. It moves again, still white. It never, ever touches the black squares. It cuts through the board, but it stays loyal to its color. And you get this rush of excitement. You feel powerful. You grab your pencil and you write it down your notebook with big bold letters. Law of nature number 1. Bishops must maintain their color. You think you've solved it. You think you understand the game. You go out and tell the world, I have found the law. The bishop stays on the color. And for a long time, everything is perfect. Every time you check, the law holds up. You feel safe. You feel like you know how the universe works. We build our engineering on it. We build our philosophy on it. It becomes a fact. It becomes the truth. We teach it in schools. The bishop law feels like we have conquered the mystery. Then you keep watching, because you are curious, because you are human. You don't stop. You look a little closer at the board. You stare until your eyes hurt. And suddenly you realize why that rule works. You discover a deeper rule. You see that the bishop isn't just magically sticking to a color because it likes white squares. It is moving on a diagonal. Ah, the diagonal movement is the real rule. The fact that it keeps its color is just a consequence. It is just a side effect of moving diagonally. This is a huge moment. This is exactly how science evolves. We find a rule that works, like fire is hot, or what goes up must come down. But then later we find a deeper, simpler rule about energy and gravity that explains why fire is hot. We are peeling back the layers of the onion, getting closer and closer to the machinery of the game, moving from description to understanding. We are seeing the gears turn underneath the board. We are no longer just watching the colors. We are understanding the geometry of the game. But wait! Just when you get arrogant, just when you think you are the master of the universe and your notebook is full of perfect laws, disaster strikes. Something terrible happens in the corner of the board. You are watching a game, feeling confident, and suddenly the king, the piece that is only supposed to move one slow step at a time, moves 2 squares to the side, and the rook jumps right over his head. And you scream, "No, that is impossible! That violates the laws." You panic, you sweat, because according to your notebook, kings move 1 square, and rooks go straight. Jumping is illegal! Your rules are broken. The universe is broken. You feel like everything you worked for is wrong. You feel betrayed by nature. You think perhaps the gods are cheating. But listen to me closely. This moment, this panic, this confusion, this is the most exciting moment in all of science. This is castling. You didn't know about castling! It wasn't that the rules were broken. It was that your understanding was too small. You see, in physics, we are not interested in the things that work perfectly. If I do an experiment and it matches the theory exactly, that is boring. We can go home. We look for the thing that doesn't fit. We look for the glitch. We look for the anomaly. We look for the thing that makes no sense. Because the moment the rules break, that is where the secret is hiding. That is where the new physics is waiting for us. We chase the mystery. We hunt for the castling. We look for the place where nature reveals a secret door we didn't know existed. We're detectives looking for the crime scene, not the perfectly organized library. It is the curiosity about the exception that drives the human race forward. And sometimes it gets even crazier than that. Sometimes the whole world turns upside down. Imagine you have watched the board for 1,000 years. You have written it in stone. Bishops never change color. It is the most fundamental law you have. You would bet your life on it. You would stake your reputation on it. And then one day, you look at the board, and there is a bishop on a black square. Your mind is blown. It is impossible. It contradicts everything you know. You think, the gods have gone crazy. The physics is wrong. The universe is falling apart. You doubt your own sanity. But then, only after you investigate, only after you wipe the sweat from your brow and look at the history of the game, do you realize what happened? A little tiny pawn marched all the way to the other end of the board. And when it hit the end, it turned into a queen, or maybe a new bishop on a different color. It wasn't magic. It wasn't a mistake. It was a rule you hadn't discovered yet because you had never seen a pawn get that far before. You had never looked at such high energy, such a wild part of the board. That is a revolution. That is exactly what happens when we discover things like relativity or quantum mechanics. We realize our old laws weren't wrong. They were just incomplete. They worked for the middle of the board, but they didn't work for the edges. We didn't see the whole picture. We didn't realize that under extreme conditions, the rules change. We didn't know that matter could become energy, or that time could bend, just like we didn't know a pawn could become a bishop. We had to rewrite the chapters of our understanding because we finally looked far enough to see the truth. Now, here is the beautiful part. Here is the thing that makes you fall in love with this subject, the thing that makes all the frustration worth it. Think about the game of chess. As you learn more about chess, castling, and passant promotion strategy, the rulebook gets thicker. The game gets more complicated. It gets messy. You have to memorize more and more exceptions. It becomes a burden. You need bigger and bigger books to describe the game. But in physics, it is the exact opposite. And this is the miracle. It looks complicated at first. When we first look at nature, it looks like a mess, hundreds of particles, different forces, gravity, magnetism, heat, light. It looks like a chaotic junk drawer full of random stuff. We have a rule for this and a rule for that, and they don't seem to match. It feels like a burden. It feels like a tangle of wires. But as we fight, and as we study, and as we find that deep rule, suddenly it all collapses. It collapses into simplicity. We realize that electricity and magnetism aren't two separate things. They are one glorious force called electromagnetism. We realize that the heat in your coffee and the movement of a steam engine are the same thing, just atoms dancing. We realize that matter and energy are actually the same thing, just in different forms. The complexity is an illusion. The mess is just because we are standing too close. We realize that the variety of the universe comes from the same simple ingredients, just arranged in different ways. And that is the hook. That is the thrill that keeps us up at night. We keep expanding our experience into wilder and wilder regions, looking at smaller and smaller particles, peering into the deepest darkness of space, smashing atoms together with more and more energy. And every once in a while the fog lifts, the clouds part, and we have these moments of integration where everything pulls together, and we realize that the rules played by the gods are not messy, they are not complicated. They are beautifully, wonderfully, terrifyingly simple. We just haven't finished reading the book yet. So the next time you look at the world, and it seems confusing, and it seems like the rules don't make sense, remember the chess game. Remember that we are just watching from the corner, and remember that the thing that confuses you the most, the thing that doesn't fit, is probably the key to the next great discovery. The game is still going on, and we are just getting started figuring it out. Every day we see a new move, and every day we get a little bit closer to understanding the mind of the player. And isn't that just the most wonderful adventure you could possibly imagine? Let me tell you, when you are standing there in the laboratory, or you are sitting at your desk with a pencil in your hand, and you get that feeling, that tiny little inkling that you have found a corner of the board that no one else has seen, it is a feeling better than anything else in the world. It's better than money. It's better than fame. It's the feeling of peeking at the answer sheet of the universe. Even if it is just for a second, even if you only see one move, you know something that no human being has ever known before. You have seen a piece of the truth, and that is what drives us. That is why we build the machines. That is why we stay up all night. Not because we want to be smart, not because we want to be important, but because we want to know the game. We want to know how it works, and the beauty of it is that the game never ends just when you think you have mastered it, just when you think, okay, I understand the bishop, I understand the rook, I understand the castling. Nature throws something else at you. Maybe you find a particle that spins in the wrong direction. Maybe you find a galaxy that is moving faster than it should, and you have to start all over again. You have to throw away your old notebook and buy a new one, and some people might find that frustrating. Some people might say, why can't we just know the answer? But for a physicist, for a scientist, that is the best part, because if we knew the answer, the game would be over. The mystery would be gone. And we love the mystery. We are in love with the unknown. We are in love with the confusion, because the confusion is the beginning of understanding. Think about how far we have come. Think about that kibitzer sitting in the corner 300 years ago. He looked at the board and he saw things falling, apples, stones, arrows. And he wrote down a rule, things fall down. Simple, elegant. But then he looked up at the moon, and the moon wasn't falling down. It was staying up. And he had to ask why. Is the moon playing a different game? Is the moon a different piece? And it took a genius. It took a Newton to realize that the moon is falling. It is falling around the earth. It is the same rule. The apple and the moon are playing the same game. That is unification. That is the simplicity I am talking about. Two things that look completely different, a stone hitting the ground and a white ball floating in the sky, are actually following the exact same instruction from the gods. And then we went further. We looked at electricity. We saw lightning bolts. We saw static in our hair. And then we looked at magnets. We saw compass needles pointing north. And for centuries we thought, these are two different games, the lightning game and the magnet game. But then we looked closer. We saw that if you move a magnet, you create electricity. And if you move electricity, you create a magnet. They are dancing together. They are partners. And suddenly the rule book got smaller. We didn't need 2 chapters anymore. We just needed 1 chapter at electromagnetism. The universe got simpler. But then, just as we were celebrating, just as we were patting ourselves on the backs, nature played the wildest move of all. We started looking at light, and we started looking at heat, And we found out that when things get really hot or really small, the rules of common sense, the rules that say a thing is either here or there, a thing is either a wave or a particle, those rules stopped working. The bishop didn't just change color. The bishop started being in two places at once. The pawns started moving through walls. This was the quantum revolution, and it terrified us. It made no sense. It violated everything we thought we knew about the game. It was like watching a chess piece suddenly turn into a cloud of smoke and reappear on the other side of the board. But we didn't run away. We didn't quit. We sat there and we watched and we did the math. And we realized that this craziness, this quantum weirdness, was actually the deepest rule of all. It was the rule that allowed atoms to exist. It was the rule that allowed the sun to shine. If the pawn couldn't move through walls, if quantum tunneling didn't exist, the sun wouldn't burn and we wouldn't be here to watch the game. So the craziness was necessary. The castling was necessary. The anomaly was the foundation of our existence. And that is where we are today. We are still sitting in that corner. We have seen a lot of moves. We have filled a lot of notebooks. We know about gravity. We know about quantum mechanics. We know about the Big Bang. But we still don't know the whole game. We still can't see the whole board. There are dark patches where we can't see the pieces moving. We call it dark matter. But that's just a fancy name for we don't know what's happening over there. We see the universe expanding faster and faster. And we don't know why. We call it dark energy. But that's just a label for our ignorance. The gods are still playing moves that surprise us. And I think that is a wonderful thing. I think it is a humble thing. It reminds us that we are not the masters of the universe. We are the students. We are the observers. We are the curious children pressing our faces against the glass, trying to catch a glimpse of the marvelous machinery of existence. And every time we learn a new rule, every time we solve a puzzle, we don't just learn about the universe. We learn about ourselves. We learn about our capacity to understand, to imagine, to reason. We learn that the human mind, this tiny little blob of atoms inside our skulls, is capable of mirroring the cosmos. We can hold the stars inside our heads. We can calculate the motion of galaxies. We can understand the game. So if you ever feel small, if you ever feel like the world is too big and too confusing, just remember the chess game. Remember that the confusion is just a puzzle waiting to be solved. Remember that the chaos is just a pattern you haven't seen yet. And remember that you, simply by asking why, are part of the greatest adventure in the history of existence. You are watching the game of the gods. And you might be the one, you sitting right there, you might be the one to spot the next move. You might be the one to see the king jump. You might be the one to find the next rule. And wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be just the most incredible thing? To add one line to the rule book of the universe. That is the dream. That is the goal. And the game is waiting for you.